it's appropriate that we have children up here, that we have a childlike poem, because there's a story, I think you might have heard it. It's an old story about a child that was born a long time ago. And he was born to save the world. And it's actually a very universal story. This whole idea is a universal story. In Greek mythology, Zeus had many meaningful one-night stands. And lots of progeny all over the place. Many of them became heroes. Krishna was the incarnation of Vishnu. He and Rama, which was also an incarnation of Vishnu, came to save the world when it was at one of its darkest points. And this whole thing of, this whole story of the divine intervening in, the divine or a force or the universe intervening in human life to bring about a shift is an old story. I think that might be the force. Which, by the way, this whole thing about intervention, the universe intervening, and then having an immaculate conception. I was driving here last night, and I realized that it shows up even in our modern mythology. See, it's an old story. The story is the divine intervenes in human nature. George Lucas was incredibly influenced by the works of Joseph Campbell. How many of you knew that? See, and for those of you who don't, now you know. Joseph Campbell was a professor and a student of mythology, and he looked at all the mythologies and he saw what was common about them and how they kept showing up over and over again. And George Lucas was incredibly influenced by that, and out of that came Star Wars, the hero of 1,000 faces. But this is interesting. It just occurred to me as I was driving last night. Remember Anakin, who would become Darth Vader? Guess what? Mama was a virgin. I thought so. I was driving in. I actually called one of my Star Wars sources who knows everything. She didn't know it. I had to Google it, but sure enough, Anakin's mother was impregnated by the Force. So see, it's showing up everywhere, everywhere. Unfortunately, he didn't have a daddy telling him how he should be raised, which is tonight's talk. Because tonight I'm going to talk about Joseph. I've talked about Mary before. You know, it's like, see what's in my heart. See, in a myth, everybody's in you. And so I always talk about what I need to know. And I've talked about Mary and Mary, oh, Mary, Mary, Mary. And then I've sometimes talked about Jesus and shepherds and wise men that weren't too smart. Here's a little holiday joke for you. If they'd been wise women, they would have gotten directions and been there on time. Anyway, but tonight I'm going to talk about Joseph because I realize that just because you have great potential doesn't mean that you don't need to be parented correctly. So Anakin's the story of someone with great potential that wasn't parented, that wasn't told about his potential. It was kept a secret. And that's what happens to all of us. You have great potential and it was kept a secret. And so you go off on your own way. But that's another story. That's not today. Today, I want to get back to this baby thing. In you is a child that will save your day. In you is a child. That innocent child is in you, and it can be your savior. What you need to be saved from is already with you. We have an inner holy child. Now, many of you have heard about the inner wounded child. Who's heard about the wounded child? Remember those? That was last century. Big deal. Big wounded child stuff. And it seems like the more attention you gave to that child, the more wounded it got, didn't it? I'm like, really? Let's just let that go. Let it go. Because here's the deal. Before the wounded child was the innocent child. There's a book out. I sometimes just read the titles of books. I get what I need, and I don't have to buy them. We could have a whole book club. And what it would be is just titles. I read the most interesting title. And then it could be our whole, talk about that title, what it meant for me. Well, so here's the title. The title was, Healthy People Think Forward. See, a lot, and this was by a psychologist, written by a psychologist, and I did read the review. And the review was, too many people are digging in the past, and healthy people vision for the future, and then let the future pull them. Now, I've been talking about that for 20 years. Somehow she heard one of my talks, did a book. Hope she makes lots of money. It's okay. But here's the deal. If we go for the wounded child and we're looking back and trying to somehow heal that child, we're not allowing ourselves to see the future of the innocent child. What if we saw our future developing from an innocent child instead of our future overcoming a wounded child? Do you see how that would change everything? To cultivate inner innocence should be a discussion. I have 2 books that people have given me on perfectionism by Brené Brown. Haven't read them. Because I realize I'm not much of a perfectionist. Controller, yes, but perfectionist, not. But I was watching something on YouTube recently where Brené Brown was speaking about perfectionism and how perfectionism comes from this sense of shame. So we have an inner sense of shame, so we just try to do everything really well so that nobody will know how shameful we feel. So if I could just do it better, nobody will catch what I'm really putting out. Well, you can do that. It works for a while. But the antidote to shame is innocence. Like, what if there was just an antidote? What if you didn't have to live out of that? Live out of, I've got to look good, I've got to be good, I've got to be the best I can be. I have to control my surroundings. I have to not let people know who I really am. Blah, blah, blah. See, the innocent child, and you'll know this, how many of you have had children? Remember when they were still innocent, no matter what they did? They were innocent no matter what they did. You saw them as innocent. Now, I know some children do certain things, like crayons on walls. We could do a whole song there, crayons on walls and down with the curtains. I mean, it could be really quite the musical. They do things, and yet you pick it up, you clean it up, and you still see them as innocent. And they stay innocent until they catch something, and what they catch is our prejudice, that things have to be a certain way, and then all of a sudden, out of our judgments, they catch our judgments. I was thinking about this because my husband loves to tell the story about his daughter, Megan, who loved vegetables until she was about 5 years old, and then her older cousin came to visit. And her older cousin didn't like vegetables. Now, this is the older cousin. Ew, vegetables. So Megan was, ew, vegetables. But until the cousin had showed up, she loved vegetables. She didn't have a prejudice against that. There was no judgment against things that come out of the earth until she was taught that. We're taught judgments and prejudice. They're catching. But the child that was innocent, that's something that was acquired, and if it's acquired, it can be let go of. Judgment is normal. Judgment and prejudices are normal in our culture. They're not natural. They're normal in our culture. They're not natural. No child was born hating anything. But they can catch it. They can acquire it. Well, if they can acquire it, they can let it go. Because that which is eternal is God, and it's innocent, and so anything added to it can be let go. And so I guess that's what I want to say today. What if we, as a group of people, this group of people in this room, what if we let go of the things that kept us from expressing our innocence? The thing that kept from us expressing our greatness? Because we were born great. One of the songs we're going to sing tonight, I'm not going to give it, I will give it away. I'm going to tell you the song and some of the words, but it's nothing like hearing the choir sing it. And thank you, Beverly, for doing this, because I have this song going off in my head most this year, and I love this song, and I wanted the choir to sing it, and sure enough, Beverly put it together. But the song is, it's in every one of us. It's in every one of us. We were born innocent and powerful and wonderful. The stories that were told of the divine taking human form, that's all of us. And we forget because we bought into somebody's idea of us that was less than innocent, less than powerful, less than beautiful, less than capable, less than magnificent. And perhaps the reason that we tell this story over and over and over again, this Christmas story, is so that somehow our psyche, our soul can remember, that baby. Yeah, it's an inner child. It hurts and eventually kills our innocent spirit to be judgmental and prejudiced. But it can be overcome like any addiction, because judgment and prejudice is an addiction. It just happens. Something happens and there we go. Off we go. Here we go. We just start judging. How many of you had at least 2 thoughts of judgment just driving here today? You're healed. I mean, really, I was listening to someone on YouTube, and she said, I have judgments of how people are in line. Like, if she's in line with somebody, if they don't move up quickly, she judges them. It's like, really? Whoa, that's a heavy addiction. I haven't judged anybody in 20 seconds. I need my hit. You'll do. You'll do. It's just a judgment. It's just an addiction. And we can overcome it, and here's how I would suggest that we do so, because I need to do so. If I want to live from my own spiritual magnificence, I can't be bogged down by human prejudice. You can either be prejudiced and judgmental, or you can be magnificent. Spiritually magnificent. Now, you can build yourself up to think you're great and tell other people you're great, and they might even think that you're great, but then you got to keep it up. Spiritual magnificence just lets you float. It's like a buoy. It raises you up. So here's how I'm starting. I'm starting to notice when I accuse others of being wrong. Now, it could be just subtle. Not necessarily wrong. They could just do better. It would be better. They could be wiser, smarter, if they would just do it my way. They're either too fast, too slow, they don't say it right, they didn't write it right, whatever. When I do that, if I start to notice, then I stop my thought, and this comes from the teacher Emma Curtis Hopkins. I stop the thought and say, I will not accuse. I will not accuse, because every judgment is an accusation. I will not accuse. I will not accuse them of being too slow. You know what? And here's the deal. If I accuse someone of being too slow, either in a lane or in front of me or the checkout line. So the last time I did this slow thing, I went to Costco. I found the line with the shortest line. They were like 5 deep everywhere, except for this one line only had 2 deep. I scoot right in, slowest checker at Costco. She had to work at it. I mean, I think she was doing some sort of Tai Chi thing. I'm exaggerating, but you get my point. Here's the deal. If I see slow, I am slow. I've judged myself for being too slow at something. I've judged myself for being too slow at learning something. I've judged myself at being too slow for getting something. Walking probably, I don't know. But if I see it, it's in me. And so not only do I say I will not accuse, I also have to say I will not accuse that other person or myself. If I see it, it's in me. If I don't like it, I don't like it in me. Now, it might be dormant, but it's in me. If I find myself accusing myself of something that it could be really wrong, I have to stop those thoughts and say, I will not accuse myself. So not only when I'm trying to accuse someone else or judge someone else for doing things not the right way, I will not accuse myself or others, is what I say. And then when I start to be on my case. So I think I am getting better. And I had a test last night. Just when I think I'm getting better, it's not like God tested me. We don't teach that. You know, well, this happened as a test. Even though I said it last night, it was a joke. So if you were here last night, God does not test us. But we can often test ourselves. So I have this new thing about not accusing myself of being stupid and not getting it and being slow. I also have one fear, one bad dream. How many of you have a bad dream that reoccurs all the time? Just like over and over. If you have a bad dream, it's that bad dream. Well, I have one bad dream. And it is that I will be walking up to the stage and don't have anything to say. So when I'm feeling really vulnerable, that dream shows up. Last night, I got here to listen to the choir, and I had left my talk at home. I know. I was cool. Didn't waste my time judging myself. I sat in about the third row. I listened to the choir and put out some new notes because I wanted to be able to take what they said and blend it in and move it into the next song. Took notes, went back up to my office, came back down, I'm ready, got some papers, put them on this podium, and what I had was a letter that I was writing to people going to a retreat pretty soon. Somehow, dear so-and-so, thank you for joining me at Rainbow Lodge in January. It didn't seem like a holiday talk. Now, it went okay, but driving home, there was fertile soil. Fertile soil for self-recrimination, which would get me nowhere. Now, I did have self-recrimination, but it was over something totally different. But even then, I have to stop myself and say, I will not accuse, I will not accuse, I will not accuse. I'm not going to accuse myself because I want to live out of my innocence. See, children grow, they try things out, they make mistakes, they learn from them, then they grow, they try things out, make mistakes, and learn from them. Adults have this tendency to want to look perfect and not be judged and not do anything that would be wrong even in their own mind, so we stop growing. We stop evolving. We stop living from our innocence and our magnificence. We live out of looking good by whatever our standards are. Innocence brings us peace. In the Hebrew language, there are 220 roots for all the words that become Hebrew. And the word shalom has a root that means nothing missing, nothing wrong. If we want to be at peace, and we talk about peace this time of year, we need to get to the place where we realize that in ourselves there's nothing missing and there's nothing wrong. We'll never get to the place of there's nothing missing and there's nothing wrong as long as we accuse, as long as we judge, and as long as we're prejudiced against others or ourselves. I would love peace, but I have to find it in myself so I can share that with others so that we can come to a place of peace on earth. And then when we touch that innocence, we touch that potential, then amazing things can happen. We have power to shift things. So I'm going to end with a poem, a rewritten poem that will sound similar to what you heard Michael read. So let's see if I can do it as well as Michael did. A little bit of, I don't know, whatever goes along with 'Twas the Night Before. Okay. 'Twas the night before innocence, when all through my mind not a thought was stirring. It was rather sublime. Open to the most peace there could possibly be, I wondered, was there a godchild in me? Now all of my feelings were also quite asleep, while visions of great joy and playfulness did leap. Both my right brain and my left brain also joined in, letting go of all thinking. We could finally begin. In the midst of this quiet arose quite a shift. Inside I could feel my whole spirit lift. My inner vision opened and something was new, yet it was still quite a mystery. I hadn't a clue. Then in the sky of my mind there shone a great light, giving me joy and delightful insight. Before me was a baby, so innocent and pure. This child was God. I knew that for sure. Yet something seemed strange. There was something more, which I'd never seen or realized before. This child was me, and I knew as a fact that when I'd once thought of limitation and lack, they were simply ideas planted in my mind by others who had been equally blind. The traits of my God self I now fully knew as peace and love and joy and pure innocence too. At that very moment, I released my fear, worry and doubt, and I knew only gratitude within and without. Seeing the truth that God and I are one, I now realized I am God's daughter, God's son. Jesus, my teacher, was born long ago, not in a palace, but a humble manger, so low. Our Savior is consciousness. It's in you and in me. It's knowing the truth, and we are finally set free. So let's open our hearts and open our minds. Let's all go within, where each of us will find the gift of pure love, expansive and free. It's the gift of God's love, and that love is me and you and me. And so it is.